Chapter 31, A Surprising Reward. What kind of manner should she adopt when approaching a close friend?
After a whole day of torture, Grandma Luo, who had returned to the Yi family with Ye Shuang in tow, had a curious expression. Mother Yi stood in the kitchen and studied Grandma Luo's expression as she prepared dinner, but she was unable to tell whether it was a good or bad sign. In the end, she had to lower her head and laugh awkwardly. "Mother, how was the trip?" Grandma Luo glanced at Ye Shuang, who was smiling, before turning to Mother Yi. "Sigh, don't ask me." In her long life, this was the first time Grandma Luo felt such a deep mixture of pride and shame. She didn't think she could relive the scene where the group of elders left in a fit of grief and indignation. However, this incident aside, Grandma Luo's impression of Ye Shuang was much improved. At least she didn't feel that the man was too unrealistically perfect as she had felt the day before. Especially that feeling of wanting to hit him so many times in the back of his head, it reminded her so much of her own unruly granddaughter. Mother Yi and Ye Shuang shared a look, and they were both equally anxious. Grandma Luo saw this exchange out of the corner of her eye and sighed. "Anyway, I don't have an opinion regarding this relationship of the two youngsters, let them settle it between themselves." "Has your brother already bought the return tickets?" Mother Yi sighed with relief. Grandma Luo looked like she didn't want to interfere. It was perfect. She hastily replied, "He has already bought them. He even just called just now to say he was going to go buy snacks for the trip home tomorrow." "Good. Xiao Ye, why don't you stay for dinner tonight? You mentioned that you have something important to do tomorrow, right? So don't forget to come home and rest after dinner. Don't worry, we won't keep you too late." Grandma Luo's statement clearly explained her position. This potential grandson had received her seal of approval. Whether or not he would become a Yi official was up to him. She was not going to interfere anymore. It was a long day, but at least they had settled the matter with the parents. Another surprising reward was that, after personally meeting Ye Shuang, Grandma Luo had completely vetoed the suggestion of her future granddaughter-in-law, Qianru. The complicated nature of the entertainment industry aside, since the person himself was not interested, it would be pointless for others to imagine how great he would be in this field. It would be unwise to direct the lives of others. The second reason was a bit selfish. With his good looks, his potential grandson already had to get rid of the normal butterflies and bees. Why push him into a world where he had to deal with fans and rich women looking for fresh blood to add to their personal collections? Did they want to kill his precious granddaughter with additional worries? Therefore, with a statement, Grandma Luo ended this discussion. She even notified Qianru that they were not going to look down on the world of academics. If Ye Shuang was interested in pursuing a future in science, they would let him. Qianru still respected Grandma Ye's influence. Even though she had regrets, she did not retaliate and accepted the decision without flinching. And thus, one of Ye Shuang's worries was solved. 2 days later, she returned to her female form. She had heeded the lesson from before and left the hotel in her female clothes. She carried her male clothes in a bag and was having breakfast before going home when she heard a hesitant voice calling her. "Miss Ye Shuang." She turned to the voice and was surprised to see that her ex-boss, Feng Mo, was out for a morning run in sweatpants. Ye Shuang smiled and instinctively greeted her. "Brother Feng, good morning." Feng Mo thought he had the wrong person. He sighed with relief when the person turned around, but before he got closer, he was shocked by the too close term of endearment. "Brother Feng." Ye Shuang quickly collected himself and a respectful composure appeared on his face. "Sorry, the words left my lips before I could help it, boss." Ye Shuang suddenly realized a crucial point: his two identities were destined not to be in the same place at the same time. This meant that her two identities would each have their own social circles, so what kind of behavior should Ye Shuang adopt? An adoption when she approached a close friend of Ye Shuang be. It would be awkward if she pretended not to know the other person, but it would also be wrong to behave in a way that others might interpret as too familiar, especially when she was a woman. Although Ye Shuang was caught in this conundrum, Feng Mo had already recovered. He smiled generously and said, "Never mind, I was just surprised. Based on my friendship with Xiao Yi, it wouldn't be out of place for you to refer to me as Brother Feng." Ye Shuang chuckled as she scratched her head. She was confused as she still couldn't think of a solution in her mind. However, she decided not to waste any more time on this detail, so she changed the subject. "Well, why did Brother Feng call me?" "It's nothing important." By now, Feng Mo had joined Ye Shuang's side. He was using the towel hanging on his neck to wipe his sweat, and the breath that escaped his lips made the temperature around Ye Shuang rise. "I heard that Xiao Yi was leaving the city today, so I planned to go with him, but he didn't answer his call. I spotted you by chance, so I'd like to ask you about his schedule. If possible, why don't we share a meal together before he leaves?" Ye Shuang blinked, then sighed regretfully. "Thank you for your kind offer, but unfortunately, he has already left." "Already left?" Feng Mo stopped moving before continuing. "But it's so early in the morning, besides, why didn't he take my call last night?" Feng Mo stopped again as his gaze wandered downwards. Ye Shuang followed his gaze and... "These clothes." Ye Shuang instantly felt like crying. Why did she run into a familiar face every time she wore or carried men's clothes? "If I told you that these are the clothes he left for me to take home to wash, would you believe me?" Feng Mo looked at Ye Shuang for a moment before shifting her gaze several degrees to the left to come across the large building behind her. The establishment sign glowed luxuriously as it caught the morning glow, XX Motel. Ye Shuang also turned around, and when she saw this, she could feel tears in her eyes.
Chapter 32, The Affair: How to Handle an Urgent Call from a Man's Wife in the Morning.
Dignity was something that had no lower limit. When a person's dignity fell below a certain level, there was no point in struggling anymore. In the end, one simply surrendered to fate. Of course, everyone started out in a state of dignity, but after being caught in inexplicable situations over and over again, the only course left to take was to resign oneself to the hopeless situation. Moments after realizing what the building she was standing in front of was, Ye Shuang's expression changed from depression to frustration before finally turning into resignation as she turned around and admitted without hesitation, "You caught me, things are just as you think." Feng Mo was speechless. In fact, he just thought that maybe she was here early in the morning to pick up the clothes that her boyfriend had left for her at the hotel, but now, things seemed even more complicated than he had anticipated. Feng Mo coughed drily to divert the topic of conversation from the direction he was heading and said with a smile, "Anyway, since he's still coming back to shoot the commercial next Thursday, we can reschedule then." "Sure, that's fine." Of course, whether Sheath would still be there at that time was a whole other question. Since the man Ye Shuang wasn't there, Feng Mo didn't think it was appropriate to have a prolonged interaction with the man's girlfriend. Even though he knew that they were absolutely innocent, vindictive rumors were sometimes hard to explain. A ladies' man insisting that he's not free and in love. Who could believe that? After nodding to Ye Shuang, as Feng Mo politely turned to leave, the phone in his pocket rang. Feng Mo answered without hesitation. However, after a hello, the hurried voice on the other end of the phone hurriedly spoke, whereupon Feng Mo's eyebrows involuntarily frowned, and his steps slowed down. The only reason to receive such an urgent call in the morning was because there was something huge that couldn't be easily fixed. Indeed, this was the nature of the call that Feng Mo had received. Technically speaking, the problem was not important, but the people involved in the problem were more than troublesome. Feng Mo's company dealt with real estate. In addition to the public, his company was also in contact with his close friends and family, such as helping his friend who had just gotten married to look for a new house, or a relative who wanted to buy a property. This was the basis of his company's network. The main character in this case was the grandson of an old friend of Feng Mo's elder. If Feng Mo was the quintessential second-generation worker, then this troublemaker was the typical second-generation deadbeat. Well, that wasn't quite right because at least he knew how to spend his parents' money. Feng Mo and the grandson were not in the same social circles. However, this did not mean that they did not know each other. They knew each other but were not close. That's because the elders of both families knew each other, so there were always occasions when their lives had to intersect. The grandson had become entangled with a C-list celebrity several months earlier. While their relationship was at its peak, the celebrity knew that this was not a man she would keep for life, so to be on the safe side, she asked the man for a studio apartment. This request was nothing to the grandson, who spent the money as if it grew on trees. Even though he knew the intentions of the celebrity, if the apartment could buy a few more months of affection of the girl, he was more than ready to spend the money. Therefore, the grandson contacted Feng Mo's company to buy a studio apartment, and it was purchased in the name of the celebrity. Technically speaking, it had nothing to do with Feng Mo. He was selling houses, and the grandson bought one. It was a fair exchange. However, there was one important character that had not yet been introduced, and that was the grandson's wife, a real tiger of a woman. Of course, if this woman came from a normal family, Feng Mo might have ignored her because, as crass as it may seem, that was the way society worked, but the grandson had married within his means, or rather, he had married someone from an equally impressive background. The wife found out from an unknown source about her husband's affair. It was unclear whether the whistleblower simply wanted to see the world burn or whether he had another interest, for he got all of the husband's friends in hot water, saying that they had all conspired to hide the affair from the wife. And that's how Feng Mo got caught up in this charade. The woman, who was angered beyond belief by this betrayal, stormed the enemy camp early in the morning and dragged the unfaithful couple out of the big bed. She scolded the husband's friends for their duplicity, and of course, Feng Mo, who had provided the house of deception, had not been forgotten. Feng Mo was silent for half a minute before he said, "So what's the situation now?" The person on the other end of the phone had tears in his voice. Ms. Chen still hasn't calmed down from her fury. She is still scolding the house. She's even talked about selling the house back. She'd rather sell it cheap than give it to the mistress. Okay, Feng Mo rubbed his temple. He was about to say, "Okay, I'll be there in a moment," when he felt someone patting his shoulders. Looking around, he realized that Ye Shuang had suddenly slipped in behind him. She was looking at him with her eyes shining with anticipation. "Brother Feng, do you have an apartment for sale? What was the exact price when the person said it was sold at a discount? Will you accept payment in installments?"
Chapter 33, A Shrew and a Vixen. Xiao Ye Shuang's sudden comment startling her.
Ye Shuang's sudden comment startled Feng Mo. He glanced at the phone in his hand unconsciously to confirm that it was indeed Apple's latest iPhone and not a fake steel box that could be used to open crabs. Feng Mo instantly felt confused. To be honest, Ye Shuang had no intention of spying on Feng Mo. After the physical optimization, even though the female form was not as impressive as the male form in terms of appearance, all the other improvements were similar for both genders, and that included super hearing. Even though the voice on the phone was soft, it was no different from being put on speakerphone for Ye Shuang. She was about to turn to leave when she heard the news about cheap real estate. She couldn't pass up such a perfect opportunity. "Brother Feng, I've worked for you before, so I can guess the selling price of the apartment," Ye Shuang said with a smile, fighting for this opportunity. "If this Mrs. Chen intends to sell it at a discount, I think it will be around the worker's price." Didn't Xiao Ye just finish an announcement? He told me to be on the lookout for cheap real estate. If you're willing to give me this chance and allow us to pay in installments, then I think the ad pay should be enough. It could be said that Ye Shuang was extremely shameless, but that was how the company worked. If one didn't take advantage of an opportunity when it presented itself, it would only benefit someone else. After all, The apartment was about to be sold anyway, so why couldn't Feng Mo just sell it to him? Feng Mo thought about it. Even if it wasn't a new house, it didn't mean that payment in installments wasn't possible. After all, as long as the money was paid, and the seller accepted it, he had no problem with it. I don't think there will be any problem if you want to buy the apartment. You could also save on the renovation. Feng Mo, who had a good impression of the man Ye Shuang, did not mind lending a hand. With a smile, he glanced at the clock on his phone. If your schedule is free for the rest of the day, why don't you follow me there now? After a few more words of discussion, another of Ye Shuang's problems was solved, and even Feng Mo, who had just received the bad news, felt much better. In fact, he had the lightheartedness to laugh at himself deprecatingly. Alas, when Feng Mo and Ye Shuang arrived at the crime scene, Feng Mo realized how wrong his assumption was. A shrew was a shrew because she did not listen and argue with reason. No matter how innocent someone was, no matter how awkward the situation had become, she was going to make everyone pay for any offense imagined against her. You dare to bring another shrew here with you? Miss Chen's eyes swept over Ye Shuang, who came out after Feng Mo from his car. Before the two of them could explain their intention, her rage increased by several degrees already. When Mrs. Chen heard that her husband and the others had all worked together to hide the affair from her, she thought that everyone she saw was against her. These people had shared a laugh and even a cocktail with her at the dances. She had thought they were friends, but in the end, they were just making fun of her. Therefore, Mrs. Chen immediately treated those women who were slightly pretty the same way she treated her husband's mistress. She wasn't afraid to mistreat anyone. After all, those who had come to interrupt the argument were people she knew, so those who had come to watch the show must have had some sort of ulterior motive. Ye Shuang's alliance with Feng Mo did not help the situation. Mrs. Chen's impression of Feng Mo was already at an all-time low, as it was Feng Mo who had helped her husband get an apartment for the mistress. So, Ye Shuang's exit from Feng Mo's car had already labeled her as an enemy in Miss Chen's eyes. Ye Shuang was confused by the enmity directed at her the moment she arrived at the scene. Thinking back in her mind, connecting the situation to the conversation she had overheard on the phone, she gradually understood why. Knowing that anything she said would only make the situation worse, Ye Shuang glanced with a pout at Feng Mo before silently moving behind him, urging him to take on the attacks that were directed at her. Feng Mo was also in an awkward position. His friend's girlfriend had been openly insulted, and he was the one who had brought her here. Feng Mo prevented the disapproving frown from appearing on his face and said, "Miss Chen, I heard that you intend to sell this apartment? It's my friend's fiancé. They are planning to find a place to buy to prepare for their wedding, so I brought her to take a look at the house." The wedding. Ye Shuang gave Feng Mo a silent look and did her best not to speak. Mrs. Chen turned her guns on Feng Mo. "You want me to sell it to her? Are you kidding me? Don't feed me lies. I'm sure she's someone's mistress too."